I'll let you go ahead and kick us off.
Yep. Welcome, welcome. Thank you very much for joining today's discussion. And my name is Vivian Mao. I'm here in the Bay Area. The reason I have to introduce myself because I noticed that we have some other folks who are not in the Bay Area. Thanks to Kevin, who is able to share the presentation details and invite a bigger group. That's great. So here in the Bay Area, we do have a pretty big community where we connect and empower one another. We meet once a month, and then we have other activities around in the Bay Area. But career has been always the number one topic that everybody pays attention to. And I really had the pleasure of listening to Kevin's presentation during iConverge. And I was like, Kevin, you need to talk to my group here in the Bay Area. I was so impressed, and I actually took a screenshot of that particular slide that says nobody coming to save you, something like
Mhm.
that. So it's not like nobody's coming to save me or whatsoever. I just feel like that is such a strong sense of ownership of our own career, and that's what we need to do. So without further ado, I'm going to have Kevin to take over the floor and talk about the topic that he is very good at. So welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you. You have to bear with me on my screen here because I want to make sure that I can keep track of the windows and everything here. So I can't go into the full screen. So just bear with me here. But thank you all for jumping on this evening, especially right after work. So I definitely want to commend you all for making the time to hear me kind of talk about embracing career pivots and all of that good stuff. I'll introduce myself here a little bit more. I'm not going to go through all of these things, but it'll all make sense by the end of our discussion today. My name is Kevin Davis, and I am a 2022 graduate of the Gies College of Business. Proud Geese alum. They make sure that they get all of their time, talent, and treasure out of me, but I enjoy it because I feel like the school has definitely poured into me and has been a benefit to me. But just a little bit about myself. I work for Erie Family Health Centers, where I lead marketing, brand strategy, community engagement, communications, social media, and all of that good stuff. And I've spent my time working in K through 12 and just general higher education. I'm currently a doctoral student at Edgewood University, pursuing my DBA on leadership excellence, focusing on organizational culture, organizational brand, which probably will make sense to you all by the time we get to the end of this conversation, because I kind of sit at that intersection of the two, marketing and organizational culture. But at the end of the day, it's all about the people. So, like I said, I got my master's degree through Gies in 2022, undergrad degree in marketing, all of that good stuff. And then I've also spent some time at Kellogg, McKinsey, my executive education. A couple things that I feel are super, super important, which help you along the way, like I said, which I think will make sense a little bit later. I was finding some time to give back to the community. So for me, that's volunteering for the Lupus Foundation, sitting on the board for New Joy, being a member of AMA, Phi Beta Sigma, 100 Black Men of Chicago, and all those types of things. So this topic is exciting to me. Marketing, branding, leadership, those are my jams. Like anybody that knows me, they know I will sit and talk about this stuff all day. I will talk about it to anybody who will listen, because I didn't have that. I didn't have that growing up professionally. Parents are great, but my parents are boomers, different mentalities, go to college, go to work. They didn't know what to do with someone who's a creative. So by the time I got to college, I had to figure it out. And so for me to start off, but before I get into this, this is a discussion as well. So if you want to unmute and ask a question or drop something in the chat, please do, because I want to make sure that I'm not talking at you. We're talking to each other. So Vivian's going to be mining the chat and let us know if something is popping up there. So the reason that I care about this, it all stems back to 2002. I was in college, I think it was my junior year. I was working for an organization, serving as a assistant property manager, doing everything right, right? I'm in college and I got married my junior year. So by this time I had a son and a son on the way. And I ended up losing that job as a property manager for this apartment community. And that meant I was losing my employee discount. So my rent was going up 100%. So I have a wife, a son, I'm in college, I'm working, a son on the way. So my whole world is flipped upside down. I had to drop out of school because I tried to find jobs, but I couldn't. I couldn't find jobs. I couldn't go back to school because I needed to make sure I had some money. And what I later realized was my entire personal brand, everything about me was tied up into that company because I loved working there. Everything about me was in that company. So I didn't have any value outside of that. And it took me a long time to figure that out. So I'm like, why isn't nobody, why is no one hiring me? I have some education, I have some skills, but people are like, no, we don't need that. And so that sent me into this spiral, moving in with family, all of that stuff. Ended up getting a divorce. That was a whole thing. Um, that was a whole spiral, financial, you name it, emotional, all of that good stuff. And then eventually I'm like, you know what, I got to figure this out. You know, nothing's going the way I was told that it would go. So I have to figure some things out and have to really learn about myself and make some hard decisions and kind of lock in on who I wanted to be, what I wanted to be. And that still took some time to get there. So then fast forward 20, about 2012, 2013, I've been in Chicago a couple of years. And I said, you know what? I think I'm approaching this all wrong. I'm a marketer. Why don't I approach my career as a marketer would? You think about your career and some of your skills in a traditional product life cycle. You have your maturity, your decline, all of that good stuff. So let me look at it this way, but then also look at myself. How am I marketing myself as an individual? Because that's what people are doing. They're looking at me as what is the brand of this person or any person that they're looking to bring into their organization. And so I had that realization, and it was just like a lightning, a light went off in my head. And so I said, you know what, let's approach it a different way. And so when you look at branding, essentially it's what people say about you based on what you put out there. And then there are these traditional elements of marketing and branding. There's the name, products, employees, services, colors, values, perception, all of that good stuff. These are the things when you think of a brand that come to mind. Let me see a couple head nods. I see a couple people like, yep, 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 that's good. So I like to feed off of that engagement since we're not together in person. So these are some of the things you think about when it comes to a brand. So really quickly, for those on the line, if I point to this brand right here, what can you tell me about it? You can unmute and just shout it out. What comes to mind when I point to this brand here?
Now or in the past?
Now,
Stagnant.
stagnant. Okay.
I was
I
gonna say
completely agree.
music.
I was gonna say innovative 20 years ago and relatively stagnant today.
But still sleek products.
User experience, yeah,
Beautiful.
design.
Mhm.
Experience. I think
Top tier.
top tier.
Who got a tear?
Okay. So when I point to this one, what comes to mind?
My
My
coffee.
kryptonite.
Kryptonite. Okay. What else we
Abundance.
got? What was that? Somebody said something and I missed it.
Yeah, I said abundance.
Abundance everywhere.
Mm.
What comes to mind? What comes to mind when I show you this one here?
I actually don't know what it is.
That's
Yeah, me neither.
Bucky's.
Bucky's. I live in
Customer
Texas.
focused.
I live in
Amazing.
Texas, so it's cleanliness.
Friendliness. Okay.
Cleanliness. It's
Cleanliness. Yes.
Amazing experience. Food, drinks, everything
Yeah.
you can imagine.
If you
Food.
haven't yet, when you go down south, they're coming up north, but when you go down south, you gotta stop at Bucky's.
Okay.
You gotta stop at Bucky's.
A well-oiled machine.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Look up their cult following on TikTok or any other platform. You'll get it. What comes to mind here?
Overpriced.
Overpriced.
Turnarounds.
Mm.
You said turnarounds?
Yeah, they were a nothing company, and they started looking at their customers again. And they said, how can we what's a new market we can get into?
My
I wouldn't
daughter
call
said
them
trendy as
innovative.
well.
Yeah, but
Yep,
wouldn't
we
call them
remember those
innovative,
old
but-
Stanley thermoses, the big green ones with the chrome cap on top.
yeah.
a quick trend that came in and it's kind of going down a little bit. It's not as a hot commodity as it was once, even though I have 3.
That's what my daughter said the same thing. She's like in my ear telling me that she said trendy. Say hi, everybody, Ava. Ava's 8 and she wanted to
Hi,
participate.
Ava. Thanks
Hi,
for
Ava.
joining us.
When I point to this one, what comes to mind?
Samsung?
Samsung.
Diversity.
What's that?
Diversity.
Diversity. Okay.
Conglomerate.
They make everything.
Hmm.
Toasters to semi-truck trailers. They make it all. What else?
Innovative.
What was that? All right, we'll keep it moving. When I put this one here, this one's kind of regional as well.
Hard to get.
Hard to get. Yeah. What is this brand?
Telfar.
Telfar. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
It's
I
hard
don't
to
even
get.
know.
Overrated.
Overrated. Okay. Collectible.
Overpriced.
Overpriced. Got some passion behind Telfar. Okay.
Well, maybe status in that case, like someone is buying it, right?
Status. Okay. Major League. We got another one here. And so for the Alumni, what comes to mind here when you think about the Gies College of Business? Or anybody, because my friends should know based on what I post. I post a lot. She said dad. What comes to mind here?
Accessibility.
Accessibility.
Democratizing education.
Yes, democratizing education. I see all kinds of thumbs up there. What else? I know we got a few more things in the tank here. This is the Bay Area. You know, y'all roll deep, so I'm sure you got something else to add on here.
Well-known brand.
It's a well-known brand.
Yep.
Yep. Let's see if we can get 2 more.
Ahead of the
This is
curve.
like second family.
Second family. I definitely agree with that.
I would say trendsetter, ahead of the curve. They were the first to go online. One of the first.
There we go. So I put a whole bunch out there, right, about these brands, and we just rattled these things off, and that's great. Why is that? Why were we able to rattle those things off?
It's what we know about those brands, and it's our personal opinions about those brands based on the marketing of those brands and how it's forced in our eyes and in our ear gates. So we're forced to have an opinion of said brand.
I'd say, like it or not, it's how we interact with the brand, how we interact with their product, how we interact with their company, our experiences. Brands are based on experience.
Mm-hmm. It's a promise. It's the delivery of a promise or not. You know, we heard some passion about Apple earlier. Personal. There's personal passion or personal understanding. But then, like last week, I was reading like the financial performance was like ridiculously crazy. So it's like what I feel may not be what's actually happening, but what I feel is what I know, right? That's probably a good way to put it. There's some consistency there. So we think about some brands here, and so the topic for today is around pivots. What is this guy known for? Who is this guy? Number one,
Basketball
Urban
and business.
basketball and business. Who is this guy?
Magic
Urban
Johnson.
Magic Johnson. So where did he start?
Michigan State,
Well, that he started there. We started
East
in
Lansing.
Indiana.
Lakers.
He started
Oh,
in East
yes.
Lansing, Michigan, outside of Michigan State.
East Lansing with the Lansing Everett, played for the Lakers whole career, and then he pivoted and then did what?
Bought a lot of Starbucks.
He's an
Starbucks,
business mogul.
No,
business
he
mogul,
took some speech
theaters.
classes.
Yeah.
He was
Theaters,
part owner,
Starbucks.
part owner of the Lakers.
He started a conglomerate. He joined forces with a private equity to basically buy up a whole bunch of LA sports teams.
Yeah. So he was
Dodgers.
part
now
owner of the
as well.
Dodgers.
Yeah.
Sodexo Magic, all of that. So he made a pivot. So do you know who this lady is? My
That's
daughter just found
Pepsi's
out.
CEO.
Yeah, that's Pepsi's CEO.
Yes, Indra Nooyi. So actually, me and my daughter just got back from meeting her today at an event. but she started off in consulting, and she pivoted because she was recruited. And the company told her, I need you more than GE needs you. We need you more over at Pepsi than GE needs you. And they were able to articulate that. So she switched from consulting and jumped into the snack food beverage game, ended up becoming the CEO of PepsiCo. Couple more. Who's this? And where did she start?
So that's
Right.
Rihanna, because that's how you say it. It is Rihanna. And she started in music, but now she's in beauty and she doesn't have to record another record if she doesn't want to.
She is also in lingerie, right? She has
Yep.
her line of
She
lingerie.
pivoted. She pivoted to lingerie. What else is another notable line?
True deal.
Perfume.
Makeup, beauty, Fenty
Makeup, Fenty Beauty.
Beauty. Mhm.
And she catered to a niche that wasn't there. And I know this because my wife's a makeup artist. I know way more about this than I ever thought I would. But she came out with the shade range for everybody. And now if you look at the industry, everybody's trying to catch up to what she did. But loyalists don't feel that it's authentic because why didn't you do it before she did it? Because she did it and it worked. They thought that it wouldn't work. We're only going to give these few range of shades. But she's like, here's 40. Take them. So she created her value proposition. Last one here.
Vera
Vera
Wang.
Wang.
Vera Wang. What did she do first?
Ice skating.
And I do know she didn't it was something about her being 40. So she didn't do something until she was 40, something later in life. So her having a later start
Yeah.
and being a trendsetter is something that resonates with me. I'll just say that.
So she started off as a journalist. She wrote in the papers. And then now you know her as a fashion mogul, right? So the message here is it's not always where you start, but it's how you pivot, when you pivot, and how do you take control of that. These are wealthy people, obviously, so it's a little bit easier to pivot with them. But if I put a bunch of everyday folks up here, you probably wouldn't know who they are. But the stories resonate with these folks, and also because of I think what Brandy said earlier is just that consistency, that resonance of what you're hearing over and over again. There's that brand presence there. You see it all the time. You see these people, they do the same thing. They're consistent at it. They don't hop all over the place, which is something sometimes we do in our careers. And so when you think about personal branding, it's not what you think. So there's some intentionality there, meaning you're doing things for a reason. There's focus, consistency, there's discretion, there's narrative control. And I'm a big fan of you don't have to regret things you didn't say. So you control that narrative, selectivity, expertise. So I talked a little bit earlier about some of my affiliations. That also adds to your personal brand, where you associate and spend your time. If you're in different cohorts, how do you represent those cohorts and make the best of those associations? Your goals are part of your personal brand because that kind of guides where you go. And also people ask you about your goals. Reputation, your reliability, and your value proposition are all parts of your personal brand. And these are the things that people don't think about. But my number one message, if you don't take anything else from me today, no one is coming to save you. Sometimes we are taught that all you have to do is put your head down, work hard, and growth and opportunities are going to come your way. Pardon my French, that's some bullshit. It's not happening. It does not happen that way. When you constantly think that goodness is on the other side of somebody's conscience or their attention span or their proximity to you, you kind of let off the gas a little bit and you keep waiting and waiting and waiting. And how many friends do you have? You talk to them and they're always waiting for something to happen. And you really want to say, you got to get up and actually go do something. Do you have friends like that? I see a couple folks nodding. We all do. And one thing I like to tell people, wishing is not a strategy. Just because you want something bad doesn't mean you're going to get it. You actually have to put some work in for it. And so I'd have this realization that no one's coming to save me because I built some solid networks. I met a bunch of dope people. I was in all the right places that I thought doing all the right things, learning the right things, and you think that that's just the perfect storm, and that means, hey, good things are going to happen. But you have to figure out, how do you turn all of that into some sort of action? And if no one shows you what that looks like, you don't even know what's possible. You don't know where to begin. And so what keeps happening? You keep pushing it and kicking the can down the road. Say, you know what, I'll focus on that later. Or you start to adopt the mentality of, maybe this isn't for me. I've done that, and say, well, if this isn't happening, maybe it's not for me. One of the big things that I learned from my divorce was, regardless of what the outcome was or who was at fault, what role did you play in it? That's not to say you need to accept blame, but that's understanding, what role did you play in that? And you start to look at your own career that way. Like, am I showing up the way that I thought I was? Am I responding to things the way I thought I was? Am I listening the way I should be? Am I speaking up the way that I should be? And you start to play things back. And that's probably one of the biggest things that I've learned, was not to just let things happen and expect things to change. And that's true for your career. And I can say that many, many years into my career, it's the same thing. It never changes. No one is coming to save you. Now, there will be nice people along the way that will look out, maybe. Some folks may want to help you, but they don't have the juice. They don't have the pull to do it. So you have to stop relying on other people. I'm not saying lose faith in people. Be realistic with what they can do. At the end of the day, nobody's coming to save you if you take nothing else from this. No one's coming to save you, and you got some homework to do. So we're going to talk about some of that. But one of the things that my old boss told me, is, it stuck with me, and she shared her what she calls her leadership mandate. And her leadership mandate is, the ultimate goal is to live a life of options to do what you want to do, not what you can do. And so her goal was to teach people, how can I help empower you to live the life you want to live, which is a life of options. So think about it in this way. If you go get a car right now, if you went to go to the dealership, would you be able to get what you want, or are you going to be able to, you have to get what you can get?
I'll go to a used car dealership.
Is
So we
this a
got,
rhetorical question or you want answers?
ask.
Oh, I can get what I want.
Job market. Can you get what you want, or you just got to kind of get what you get? Have you ever thought
I,
about it that way?
I I feel like in many ways, if you're intentional, you can actually get what you want.
Got to put in that work, right?
Right.
Put in that work. My dealership analogy, you got a couple things you think about. You got to think about your money, you got to think about your credit. It takes time to build that credit. It takes time to sustain it. And so credit is one thing, and the other part is the income. Are your bills together? Can you handle this new load over here? So you have to put in that work to get the money and sustain the money. And then the goal is to grow more money, so that that payment is less of the money you spent. So you have to think about your career also in that perspective. How do you get to that point? And so we're going to walk through a few things here today. And again, please feel free to ask questions about this, because I'm talking about it because I lived it the hard way. There's some folks on the call that know my path, and that it wasn't fun, but I learned a lot. But my goal is to make sure you don't trip over the same rock that I did. You'll trip on your own rocks, but now that you've had this conversation, we should not trip over the same rock. So that's my whole goal. That's why I teach at North Park University. That's why I give these, lead these types of conversations, because I didn't have anybody that could walk me through from a real place. It was always theoretical or pie in the sky, idealistic. So I want to help you set yourselves up. I know it sounds like a sales pitch, but it's not. I'm not selling anything, but I want you to live a life of options, to do what you want to do. But it's going to take some work. It's going to be uncomfortable. You're going to be tired. You're going to be frustrated because your timing doesn't always work with an organization. Or if you want to start a business, it doesn't always align with your clients. And so you have to figure out, how do I have the fortitude to push me through to get there? And it might take longer. There's no linear path. So you got to be realistic about that. And even still, many, many years of my career, it's still not a linear path. but I know that it's going to take some time and I have to continue to skill up, learn some different things, unlearn some other things, and refocus my outlook on life on that. So we're going to keep it going. And so the goal of the conversation today is talking about pivoting. And I'm going to speak about this from like a new role perspective, and you can apply this to entrepreneurship, however you see fit. But there's some questions that you have to ask yourself, and this is a part of that homework that nobody wants to do. Everybody expects that they should get something nice or better just because they are aging or they've been somewhere for 5 or 10 years. Tenure is not a qualifier in most roles. It might get you a pension somewhere which doesn't exist, but it doesn't give you a right to anything greater than what you have, which is always shocking to me when I talk to folks. They're like, "Oh, I've been here 10 years." And I'm like, "But what have you done for the past 10 years?" And then it gets silent. That's what I thought. So ask yourself some questions. Why are you looking for a new role? What types of work are you looking to do? What does success look like in this role? How will you measure growth? How long do you plan on being in this role? What do you need to learn or experience in this role to prepare for the next role? And so there's some questions here that plant seeds for the future. One of the biggest misses we have in our careers is we get into a role and we don't think about what's next. We get into a role, we say, you know what, it's a new job, I'm starting with some more money, more responsibility, new company, or less drama, right? And then 2 or 3 years passes, and then what? How do we feel? It's time to move on, it's time to move up. But if you thought about some of these things before you got that role, you would have maybe not picked that role, or you may have asked different questions, or you may have started from a different point. And so, in looking at like how do you measure growth in this role? In your current role, you may start and say, you know what, I'm going to be in this role for no more than maybe 3 or 4 years, whatever that looks like for you. You need to figure out, how do I know when it's time to leave? You don't know that until you figure out why you're there. What am I taking this role for? What do I plan to do? What do I plan on learning? And what do I plan on accomplishing? Once you check those three off, it's time to move up or out. But you don't know that until you have these critical conversations before you start looking for roles. And these questions will also help you in your interviews, because these are the questions you're asking your potential employers, which will help you make the decision if this is the right place for you. Instead of, "Oh, do you have any questions?" "No, I think you all answered everything." You just missed a great opportunity. What does growth look like in this role? What are you missing in this role that I can provide? Is there a career ladder in this role? Because sometimes they'll answer you up front and you'll hear that and say, "That's a red flag. I'm good. No, thank you. That's not a good fit. It might be more money, it might be a better job, but does it fit you long term?" Instead of leapfrogging around, you need to make some strategic moves. Start asking yourself some of these questions. These are questions that I ask myself every year. And some of my friends are on a call, and I post about this as a reminder to others. Embrace your career or your current role year by year. Ask yourself these questions. Are you still passionate about the work? Are you supported in your growth and development, which I think is a huge one? Is your pay on par with your industry and delivery level? You notice I put not tenure. So if I'm a senior director, marketing brand strategy, is that on par with the industry? And then also, because my organization, we have a weird title or naming convention, when I look at my output, it may be the same as a vice president or a CMO. So am I being paid fairly for what I'm doing? It's not about how long you've been there. So you want to assess your pay and have that conversation. Do you have the skills to continue in this space? There's something that a old board member at one of my previous roles told me, and it stuck with me. He said, "There'll come a time where the needs of your organization will outpace the skills of your team, and you got to figure out how do you make that adjustment." And so that means, am I still the person that can continue moving us forward in this organization? And you got to have this realistic conversation. You might know when you're starting to tread into deep water outside of your zone. You got to be realistic and maybe have that conversation with their boss. So, you know what? I don't think that where we're trying to go is my sweet spot. Let's figure out what's next, or maybe it might be time to leave. Otherwise, you'll be shoulder deep in the water. Your performance will suffer, and you'll get fired. Like that's the outcome there. Also, Do you want to continue in this space? So thinking about your industry, I just did a one-on-one, like a one-off coaching call with someone yesterday who works, in home audio. And so I posed that question, like, do you want to work in this space? Still, you've been there, but just because you've been there, do you still want to be in this sector? You need to figure that out because if you're not going to get the experience that you want, it may be time to move into a different industry and figure out how is that transferable. This one is super important. This one here where it says, are you positioned and visible within your industry? I'll give you an example. So I work in marketing. The American Marketing Association was founded in Chicago. It's the largest chapter, it's the biggest chapter. So I spend a lot of time with the AMA. I've served on their board. So when I'm around these people, am I well positioned in the marketing industry when I'm around my peers? Do I feel like I'm getting the exposure I should, the training I should? Am I doing the work that I should? And that's sometimes you might not be. Your company might be stunting your growth. And so you got to make a hard decision of, I like working here, but I'm not getting the visibility and the training within the sector that I would if I worked somewhere else. So these are questions that I ask myself every year around performance review time. And so these are the questions that I ask my boss at the same time. The first year I did it at my current role, my boss was like, what the hell is happening? I've never had anybody ask me these questions. But it was ask your boss, is there room to grow? Because you need to be mindful of your time. You're giving a lot up to work somewhere. If there's nowhere to grow and you want to grow, and they tell you that, you got to make a decision. You can't will a, a growth opportunity in a space where there's no room to grow. It's just not going to happen. Also asking your boss, am I still delivering as you expected? They hired you for a reason. Things happen, go back and forth, but you want to know, am I still delivering at the level you expected when you hired me? And sometimes they may tell you, oh, well, yeah, or I've seen a decline here, 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 or yes, plus or minus. And then lastly, here is asking your boss, what are my growth and opportunity areas? There's a reason that I'm asking you to ask yourself these questions and ask your boss these questions. The top question is because you need to take control of your career. Nobody's coming to save you. No one's thinking about your career like you. You can have the best relationship in the world with your boss, but at the end of the day, your boss has their own life to manage. They're managing and advocating for themselves. You have to take control and shift the power dynamic. You are giving up just as much as they're giving you to work there. It's a brand exchange. We're often taught that the way that the balance swings is working at an organization. They're giving you everything and they just happen to give you a little bit of money to be there. But when you reframe that, this is a partnership, even from the most junior level in an organization, it's a partnership. At the most junior level, they brought you in for skills that you have and also potential. Further down the line, they bring you in because you bring certain value to the organization. The earlier you accept that this is a partnership and you have an equal say in it, and you get to decide how you feel based on these questions, you will be unstoppable. You'll have a different level of confidence. You might have a little bit of arrogance, and I'm not afraid of that. That's not always a bad thing. Because once you know your value proposition, you know how much extra you bring to the role. You know, if they line 5 people up that do the same thing you do, your value proposition is that you do something that these other folks don't do. But this last section is super important because it signals to your boss, I'm not on your clock. I am taking control of my career. I am asking these questions because I need to know. I want to hear directly from you. You should not be hearing the answers or inferences on your performance only at the annual performance review level. By then, we should not be surprised. With my team, I have one-on-ones either once or every other week with my team. This is their time to talk to me about their projects, whatever they want to talk about. It's 80-20, 80% they talk, 20% I just listen because this is their time with me. What do you need? I don't have anything. We can forego this week. Cool. If I have to coach, then I bring it into that setting. I don't want you to be out here trying to figure out if you're performing at the right level. And I don't want you to wait until you get to your performance review to see how you've done all year. Because how demoralizing is that when you've worked hard all year and you get this performance review and say, my company is 1 through 4, right? You rate yourself 3s and 4s and you get 2s back. And you're both looking at each other like I guess a card deal. How are our numbers so far apart? It's because they didn't coach you and talk to you all year. You didn't ask. And so who should you be mad at? That you're finding out at the end of the year that you're here, excuse me, you thought you were here, but you're here. You're operating off 2 different expectations because you didn't take control.
Kevin, that's so hard. I don't know. I feel like that's really putting myself into a lot of like unknown and a lot of vulnerability, I guess. I do understand that it's important to check in to see where things are at, to think in terms of the expectations and things like that. But asking the questions, am I still delivering as you expected? I feel like, wow, that's really
It
some force there.
it's I mean it's going to push you out of your comfort zone because it's something
Right.
you've never done.
Mm-hmm.
But you're going to get the answer to that question one way or another. It could be all year that you have
Mm-hmm.
to wait, or we
Mm-hmm.
can figure this out somewhere earlier in the process. And
Mm-hmm.
so I don't want to wait all year for something to be off.
Mm-hmm.
I think his name is Reid Hoffman, one of the founders of LinkedIn.
Mm-hmm.
He gave a quote. I may have it in here later because I usually drop it in every presentation. And his quote is, "You can be inches off at launch and be miles away off target by orbit." So what you do
No.
today that's off, by the
Mm-hmm.
end of the year, you could be over here and you end up having a very difficult conversation. It happens. I've been on the receiving end of difficult conversations because I was operating off the best intentions model where, oh, yeah, they'll tell me if I'm doing wrong. Not everybody knows how to coach. Not everybody feels comfortable telling high performers or anyone that their performance isn't on par. So they avoid it just like you avoid asking the question. It's
Mm-hmm.
like a game of battleship, and I know I'm aging myself, where you're guessing what's happening on the other side of the board.
And here in Silicon Valley, we have a lot of engineers.
Mhm.
Engineers don't really want to ask those questions. They probably don't even talk that much, just work with the machine or whatever, right? So that's a tall order. That's
Yeah.
really, I think,
And
mentally and even just in reality, how that to make that happen. And I like how this tied back to your theme is no one is coming to save you, because we do really need to take ownership of our career. If this
Mhm.
needs to be done, then we need to take care of it. We're not gonna
Yeah.
wait for our bosses to come to tell us.
Yeah.
And by then
I
might be
see
too
Mike.
late.
I see Mike has a question, but I want to say
Go
one
go
thing.
ahead, go ahead.
Because Vivian, you said it's important. So with all of these things, you have to figure out what makes sense for where you work,
Mm-hmm.
how your personality and all of that. So you may not be able to be as direct as I am, but what is your relative level of this?
Mm-hmm.
Where you can say, even at a soft level, hey, I just want to check in. I know we usually wait until the end of the year to talk about my performance, but I want to be able to check in maybe quarterly. So now that's changing it, and it's how you're framing it because you may not be able to be as direct as I am, but you're trying to find your level and what matches the culture where you work.
Yep.
And with that caveat, if you feel like you're fighting the culture, you're never going to win. And so you got to make another decision. The culture is never going to change.
Mm-hmm. Agree.
The culture is the culture. And so you have to figure out if I can't ask any of these questions, I can't inquire on my growth or anything, then you got to figure out like, is this the best place for me to work? Because you're essentially operating head down in some sort of fear of reaction, or response to this. So you have to figure out what's your relative level, and it might not happen right away. So, Michael.
Yeah, Mike's great. First off, I played Battleship, so you're not dating yourself. I actually will have to leave a little early, so I don't want that to take away. I'm incredibly interested in what you're saying. I love what I'm hearing. It seems like a fairy tale. I don't know if I've ever had a boss do that. I don't know if I've ever been in a place where I've wanted to be either. I've always been in a place of need.
Yeah.
With that being said, I think, how do you negotiate? My question ultimately is, how do you negotiate that with sort of I'm not going to call it a fairy tale. I'll call it
Mhm.
what it should be, because I notice a lot of people cannot manage, and a lot of managers are really good independent contributors, individual
Yeah.
contributors, and not actual managers. Within kind of what Vivian mentioned about the vulnerability,
Mhm.
you know, at the end of the day, this is sort of a power game as well. I hate to acknowledge that,
It
but
is.
when you overperform a boss, they get scared. When you underperform, you know, I'm just really confused by this, because being a nice guy and doing the right thing and overperforming doesn't get you what you want. And so when I try to have these conversations, they go nowhere.
Yeah.
And I've just been in bad situation after bad situation where I notice a lot of people are just not good managers. What you're describing is perfect. You seem like a great manager. This is what it should be.
Mhm.
I've never seen anything like
I am the way that I am because I've had my managers have sucked. And so my thought process is, and I'm gonna circle back in a second. My thought process is, or was, in those moments, remembering how I felt with my bosses, remembering how I felt, and making that note to myself: when I am at this level, I will not treat my people this way. I will not do this, because I remember how I felt. Um, and some of the folks on the call remember I worked for Target when I first moved to Chicago. Um, I worked overnight on the freight team because I just had to figure some stuff out, right? And while I hated the job, the only thing that I liked was the way that it gave me an opportunity to learn people and their motivations, because I worked with a bunch of folks who didn't want to be there. And they let us know every day. And our productivity sucked every day. But it allowed me to learn and talk to people to understand their perspectives. Why do you feel this way? Why are you so angry? And then you get to it, it's like, I get it. Okay, let's figure out a plan. But every night when my boss was terrible to me, I wrote a note in my phone, and I still have this Word document. Every night for those 2 years that I worked, the things that I hated and I would not do when I got to that level. Those became my mandate. Now, to your point, yes, this can sound like pie in the sky, it can sound like, unicorn tears or whatever, but until you get a leader or, a manager or supervisor that really cares and is a good leader, you got to figure out how do you manage up, which is hard. Because if you manage up too much, folks get intimidated. If you don't manage up enough, you get pushed around. And so it is a game. And so you have to figure out, if we're in this game, it's either me or them. And I refuse to be unhappy every day. So I need to figure out how to you'll know if you can shift things in your current role. It's a little bit easier when you start somewhere new, because you can show up and be who you couldn't be in the organization. It's kind of hard to flip the script in an existing organization or existing role. Um, but you have to figure out, how do you manage up? And that could be little small things, and just talking about, hey, I just want to talk about, what are your expectations for me this year? And so you're understanding them, but you're also signaling to them, I'm trying to figure out, how do you want it done? Because at the end of the day, that's what matters. When you try to do it your way and it doesn't match with them, regardless if your way is better, y'all gonna bump heads. It's gonna be a culture clash. So there's a lot of managing up that needs to happen. But if you can't do that, you got to make a hard decision and figure out, you know, can I thrive in this place? Is it time for me to look for somewhere to go? I'm One thing about me is I'm not one of those people that tell you to leave the first sight of something going wrong. That you don't learn anything. But I'm also an advocate of knowing when to leave. When you have had conversations, you've tried a different approach, and you've given it a reasonable amount of time to settle and see if it works. And if it doesn't, then you can say, you know what? I realize I'm fighting a culture that I can't win. Now, is that the organizational culture, or is that your team culture? Is there an opportunity for you to move, even make a lateral move to another team under a different leader? If you can't get around them, you have to figure out, can I suffer here for X amount of time until I achieve what I came here for? Because it's a little bit easier when you make that mental shift to say, you know what, I can't do some of this manage up stuff here, but I do want to achieve these things here. So you switch your expectations and say, you know what, this is trash. I can't expect more from it, but I'm here for a reason. I can deal with this until I get to this point. That happens. And then you have to make a decision on, what does my next step look like? And then it informs how you interview with your next role, with your potential supervisor. Like, how do you manage people? How do you coach people? You're able to ask these questions that you couldn't before on the front end, but it takes practice. Like, you learn the boldness over time. It doesn't happen right away. But you got to look at it this way. Does your way work right now? Or is it time to do something different? So there's going to be some discomfort. And I'm not saying jump 2 feet in, but how do you inch it up a little bit, even shifting maybe one-on-ones or check-ins with them to talk about the things that matter to you, or to see um, if some of these things that I'm talking about can be addressed. You're spending time there, and it's affecting your well-being if you're not able to do what you want to do the way you want to do it, or getting out of the partnership what you think you should. So, and then you take your notes of, when it's my time, I'm not going to be a trash leader like these other ones over here. Like, that's your mandate. That is your obligation now that we're having this conversation. Is, when you move forward, how do you show up differently for other people? How do you advocate for other people in that regard? So I don't know if that helps, but there's no perfect answer. It's hard, and you have to figure out, like, incrementally how you can work things in. And then you just got to make tough decisions. That's the part that I've learned to accept, is that you have to make some tough decisions on, can I deal with this for a period of time? Or is it really, really time to go, and starts to affect your well-being, your love for the work that you do? Because I've been there too. Like, do I really hate what I do, and we're just at a terrible place? And some people make you leave a whole industry, and it was just where you were or who was leading you. That was the problem. But it's algebraic equation. You got to move something. You got to solve for one of those things, but it shouldn't be at the expense of your well-being, or your health, or anything like that.
That's a fair answer. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Right, Raya has a question. She
Oh,
just
yeah, I'm sorry.
raised her hand.
Maybe not a question, but to reiterate what was said before, I think sometimes it depends on where are you on the professional level, right?
Yep.
So for example, when I was less experienced, I had great managers, great mentors. They were always advocating for me, and because it was easier for them to promote me from, let's say, junior position to mid-level position or something like that. But the higher you get, the less advocacy, at least that's my opinion, my observation. Like, for example, when you're ready to get into director level or VP level, it's not about mentorship anymore, right? It's more about something else. I couldn't figure it out yet but I think it's harder to get that advocacy and sponsorship, mentorship, the higher you get in your career.
Yes, I agree. I think that the higher you get, I think the folks that you'll see being successful, they do a couple of things. They focus on the soft skills. We've been taught the wrong way. We've been taught to focus on, if I'm a marketer, let me focus on marketing, 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 marketing. No, it's the soft skills. How are my project management skills, my delegation skills, my relationship building skills? How's my global view of the organization? And when I say global, I mean like organization wide. Am I so laser focused just in my bucket, where I'm technically profound and sound just in the hard skills? And then you get stuck there because they're like, you're good at that one thing because that's where you're locked in. But if you start building those relationships and joining some of these committees or extra teams to do extra projects, that's when you start to build that camaraderie and that familiarity with other folks who start to have those conversations, um, you know, the, outside of your team. Again, it comes back to a culture thing. If folks typically don't leave those roles and you see that they're hard to get, you got to make a hard decision. If it's a great company and there are a few roles and you just can't move around, you gotta make a hard decision and say, you know what, do I want to just sit here and wait for somebody to leave when when turnover is relatively low the higher you get up? You gotta make a hard decision. So it's all about kind of like pivoting. And again, I'm not saying run. You got to know the culture of your organization and the dynamics and the politics. And sometimes it's even having conversations with somebody that's, a whole division over to get advice on how did they move through the system or how they navigate it, how they recommend you, make your next moves or advances in an organization. Sometimes we get too stuck in our little verticals or our silos, and there may be a whole opportunity somewhere else or out the door at another organization. But you're right. The higher you get up, it is a bit harder to get promoted. You can always, I don't say always, you can most likely always assume more role, get a little bit more money, but your title might not change. So you got to figure out what matters to you. Is it the pay? Is it the title? Is it the responsibility? Adulting sucks. There's so many decisions you have to make, so many hard decisions. But the earlier you accept it, the more you don't dread it. You just realize that's the game. And that's how everybody else is winning because they're figuring out how to move through, with the exception of cronyism, nepotism, all of that kind of stuff. So we're not talking about those types of situations. So I'm gonna keep it moving here, but I think this is important. This section is very, very important. These are hard questions you have to sit with that you've never had to sit with in your career, and you start to look at things a little bit differently. But so these are ideal situations. So what if life happens to you and you are forced to pivot? And what that means is getting fired, getting laid off, contract ended. Now what? So you don't have the luxury to think about these things. You're here. So the questions you got to ask or think about, are your relationships warm? Meaning, have you been keeping up relationships with people on a regular basis, which I strongly advocate you do, so that you're not always asking for something. These are just people you talk to all the time, or you respond on their post or whatever. Will you take anything, or do you have options and time? So when you reach out to people and you tell them, hey, I'm out of a role, be specific on what you need. I'm looking for these types of roles in this industry, um, preferably, this amount of pay here, because they can't help you if they don't know what you want. And if you don't know what you want, you can't ask for help, and then you're going to be upset nobody helped you. So you have to start thinking about that. Are your career expectations up to date? So have you been at your organization for 5, 10, 15 years, and you have no idea what the real world, I don't say real world, the outside world is like in terms of your role somewhere else. So are you operating just off your company's expectation of, senior director of marketing, brand strategy, or is that the industry? You might have to figure out, how do you skill up? How do you translate your title, your experiences to what the industry looks like? Also, once you're going through this, how can you mitigate against future career shocks? So this was mine. I got fired in 2002 and in 2017. So when I got let go in 2017, I didn't care. I was like, I'll be all right. I was able to stay home with my daughter for the first 6, 7 months of her life. My wife's like, just take your time. Cool, because I knew that I had all these things together because I had experienced this before. It's like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. Like once you get punched in the mouth, you know how to defend yourself. It's a hard lesson to learn. But once you get punched in the mouth, you're like, I know how to defend myself now. But I spent all of that time building those relationships, spending that time and figuring out, how do I pivot if something happens to me? And then life happened. My role was gone. Cool. I'll figure it out. And then what is your ask of other people? I have a lot of people who send me messages on LinkedIn, because I'm very active on there and I'm very active in general. So they see me out and about, and I know a bunch of people. Hey, do you know anybody that's hiring for this and that? And I'm like, maybe. What do you need? And they, oh, just whatever they got open. No, I can't just go say, hey, y'all, do y'all have anything open? What are you looking for? Just something? What are they looking for? I don't know. What's the pay they're looking for? They said anything. So how can I come back to you? And then you'll be upset at me because I didn't look out for you. I didn't help you, but you didn't tell me what you needed. I just posted something on LinkedIn. Somebody shared, excuse me, on Facebook, someone shared, instead of that, if you're looking for a role, instead of that open to work badge, they said, put together this little graphic. And it says, I'm looking for these roles in this area. It's like a shortened version of a resume. Because if, as people are scrolling, they can see quickly, I'm looking for these types of roles in this industry, in this area. You know, some folks put their pay instead of that little green thing, hey, I'm looking for my next role. I don't know how to help you. And if I happen to be hiring, just like somebody in the Geese iConverse chat, they were saying they're looking for a role. So I clicked her resume. I was like, look at my company, because she was very clear on what she was looking for. Look at my company. We may be hiring for your role. So you have to be very clear what you're asking of other people, so you don't get your feelings hurt if they don't help you. Brandy?
So I did see that when you posted about the open to work, but my question is, I meant to ask you, so is this your like your background cover photo
Just in
in
a post.
okay, so in a
Yeah, make a
post
new.
on LinkedIn?
Yeah. So you know you may post a picture, an event or something. Just post that graphic just like you would, and you can put
Oh,
in there, hey, I'm looking for my next role, details below, so that it pops up as folks are scrolling, and then they click on your page. It's going to be in your post section as well. Yeah. Hey, if you can put in your that little top banner, I'm all for it. You're all marketers now, right? So you have to figure out, this is your point of sale. You're at the register. These are your signs. People click your page. I'm here. I'm hiring. You know, I'm looking. You have to, how do you market yourself? You are all marketers now. There's no excuse.
yeah, because I've never had any luck really on LinkedIn or Indeed for that matter. And
Yeah.
so I know other people have, and I just have not had any luck with that.
You
So
know, the magic of LinkedIn is in the relationships, in spending time. And I'm not saying you got to devote your life to responding to everybody, but it's finding commonalities. People love commonalities. Oh, you went to Gies, yeah. Oh, you're in 580 Sigma, yeah. Oh, you from Detroit. People like that. So I'll go to people's pages, and I may need an author to come speak somewhere, and I'll find a commonality, and folks like to know that you actually looked to figure out why is this of interest to me. But when it comes to the roles, it's easier when you see a company, and if you click, it'll say, who do I know that works here? Or who in my network can introduce me? That's probably the best way to click, because there's an opportunity, there's a path. And so I may click it and say, oh, there's a position at Erie Family Health. It looks like Brian is somebody in my network that works there. Hey, Brian, can you connect me with the HR business partner that posted this role? I would love to learn more about it. So now you have a direct line that way. It may happen, it may not. Some people are more active than others on there, but at least now you have a name. When you click and see, let me reach out to this person. Sometimes the recruiters will put that on there. I've seen more success that way versus just directly reaching out to someone because of, the same organization or went to the same school. Because folks like to keep passing the potato around, like, oh, there's an actual posting. Kevin reached out. Let me connect Kevin with Brian. Brian's over there. Now they've talked. I've done my part. Let me know. Let me know how that goes. Um, so yeah, and I can chat a little bit more about that on the LinkedIn at the end. Let me keep it moving. We've got a little bit left here. We're getting into the meat, like the meat of the conversation. We talked about what it is, the conversation you start having with yourself, but probably prior to today, this is what you thought your personal brand and all of that stuff looked like. Let me know if I'm wrong. You thought it was like social media, resume, your work, wishing, for some folks, maybe your prayer. But as you're finding out, it's all of this stuff at the bottom. This is the work that nobody wants to do because it's not sexy. There's no immediate gratification here. It takes time. So when you spend time working on your goals, your habits, your personal mission, um, and I highlighted a few things here. Relationship building is huge. I am big on that. You want to get to the point where you call people and like, what do you need? But that takes time. That takes trust. It takes consistency. I recommend writing people little cards when you do something like, hey, it was great running into you, or sending those personal text messages, kudo on this job promotion, whatever. You have to find a way to build relationships. The digital world has made everything so impersonal where there's no personal touches. People measure things on likes. Who engaged with my post? I'll skip the post and I'll send you a text directly because I want you to see how I felt or my reaction to what it is. And I want you to see kudos. I appreciate what you did, or, much love on what you did here, because I know that means a lot to me. Remember how you feel in situations. Think about how you can show up that way for other people. So when you need something, you have that relationship. It's not a cold call ask. Uh, Ram, did I say it correctly?
Yes, yeah. So, out of this, one important thing is missing is you should add continuous learning. I mean,
Oh,
you should, refine your skills, build new skills throughout the years. Otherwise, you'll just rust and you may not be able to move further.
I agree 100%. I kind of couch that under professional development, but yeah, that can be spelled out. Anybody knows me, that's where I spend a lot of my time. That's where I spend a lot of my time and figuring out how can I be a better marketer? How can I be a better leader? How can I be a better boss? How can I be a better thinker? Because everything that I learn changes. And the more I learn about different people, I'm acquiring new skill sets. And I'm not waiting until life happens to me before I figure this out. So they say, recession indicators are when people start going back to school. That means that the economy's bad. They start going back to school. When the economy's good, you see a decrease. So you think about that. If you are already getting yourself together and things go south, you're already ahead of the game because everybody's just going to skill up. And I'll chat about that in just a second. So we have this slide here. It's not what you thought it was, but the reality is a lot of work behind the scenes here. And here's some uncomfortable truths. Social media is everybody's highlight reel. Nobody shows their ups and downs. I post some of mine because I feel like transparency. Folks need to know that everything isn't all rosy all the time, and I have no problem sharing my background, but I'm not everybody. Um, there are no shortcuts. Nobody owes you anything. Nobody cares. Yes, someone may have wronged you professionally. Closure is overrated. Yes, you have been undervalued. Yes, you've been underappreciated. Yes, you've been overworked. Only you can move you forward. The process is iterative. You will not always win. Your only competition is yourself. And there's some folks on this call that I know that can finish this statement. Excuses are what? Somebody knows the
Tools of being competent.
Yep.
tools of incompetence. Keep it going. Keep it going.
They build monuments of nothingness. They build roads that lead to nowhere. Those who specialize in it will never accomplish anything.
There we go. Excuses don't get you anywhere. I'm not a fan of excuses. Things happen, yes, but there's never an excuse. Once you get beyond these things here, all these things can be all true. People can hate you. They can do whatever they want to at your job. They can be mean, all that. And then what? Yes, yes, that happened. And then what? What do you want to have happen now? Do you want an apology? You're probably not going to get it. Do you want closure? You're probably not going to get it. Nobody's coming to save you. These are all things that have happened to every one of us on this call today. But at the end of the day, what happens? The day is going to end. So once we got we got that part out the way. You want to make sure that you're not being intense in little bursts. Oh, I'm excited about this, and then a month passes, um, and then you look up, you don't have the results because that's not how you get progress. You get progress through consistency. I think I got a couple folks on the call that can probably talk about me, and say that I'm just a jerk when it comes to this piece of pushing consistency because it's not going to happen when you jump in and out every now and then. You got to stay committed. I am a diehard Michael Jordan fan, but I hated him growing up because I'm from Detroit. But when I look at his thought process on the consistency and what it takes to be the best, I vibe with it. And like he says, if you don't want to play that way, don't play that way, but also don't expect these championships. If you don't want to work that way, you got to be cool with the results for the work that you did not do. So you want to focus on that consistency piece. One of the biggest mistakes you can make is thinking you've got time to put off developing your personal brand. You never know what's going to happen. You never know what's going to happen in life. Your life may change, or you may say, I need to do something different. Have you been putting in that work? Like all this is not a phase. It just becomes who you are. You become committed to investing in yourself on a regular basis to the point where you're always doing something. You're always learning something. You're always advancing. And I'm not saying to be like me. Be the best version of you, but be consistent with it. So that when you need to pivot or when you want to pivot, you have the option. Yeah, get comfortable with the journey. The time is going to pass anyway. And my best friend threw this in my face because I didn't want to go back and finish my bachelor's degree because I'm like, I've already spent time working on this, and these programs that I want to transfer into, they're trying to cost me extra years to go back. I'm like, I already did it. He's like, the time's gonna pass anyway. What else you gonna do? And I was like, damn, that's because I can sit and complain about it for 2 years, or I can be done in 2 years. And so I say this all the time, the time is going to pass anyway. When there's something that you don't want to do, the time is going to pass anyway. So when the time passes, will you look back with success or regret? And I've committed myself to never look back with regret. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to figure it out. The time is going to pass. If I want to get to this level here, I got to put in the work. It's not going to just happen. It's just not going to fall out. If it does happen, that's great, but I can't expect that because what? Nobody's coming to save me, right? So I talked about this a little bit earlier, indirectly, but I like this image of this soldier here. The soldier is learning how to pack his parachute. I've never served in the military, but I'm a big fan of certain things, certain aspects about the military, and it's their preparedness. They spend tons and tons of time doing things in case they have to do it. And in case it goes wrong, they have a contingency. And in this situation here, they're practicing how to pull the cords out, how to separate them, and then how to pack it. They put it on the table, then they unpack it, they put it back together, they pack it. They keep doing that. So they know it in the darkness. They can feel what needs to happen. So when it's time to jump out of the plane, they know that their parachute worked. Why? Why is that? That's a question for you all. Why do they know that their parachute is going to work?
Because they have practiced over and over again for hours, so they know it's going to work because they prepared for it.
They put in that time. And that's the approach you have to take with your career. Like I said, I got pushed from a plane in 2017. I was like, okay. I was kind of glad because I developed professional PTSD at that role. And I was like, you know what? This is a blessing. I can only say that because I've been through it. And I knew how I've been preparing myself for if something like that happened. Mentally, financially, emotionally, where I knew the risk that I could take. But it took me being thrown from the plane and falling on my face to figure that out. You shouldn't have to figure that out that way. You don't have any excuse because we're having this conversation today. So we have no excuse. So what does this all look like? Here's some homework that you have to do. What do you want out of life? For what do you want to be known? What skills are needed to achieve those goals? What does your ideal career path look like? Determine your value proposition. If you take nothing else from this slide, that second from last bullet, your value proposition. When you go into a job interview or you're up for a promotion or whatever, you should have a level of confidence that you possess a certain skill set that other folks don't. That is your value proposition. So if you go back to that slide, we talked about Apple, we talked about Buc-ee's, Telfar, all those different brands. There's a value proposition. Starbucks is not the best coffee. It's consistent. Wherever you go, you're going to get the same bean water. Apple, it may not be the best product for you, but it's consistent. It gives me this. In the lineup of all these different products, you know the value proposition of each of those. So when you look at yourself, if you look at comparable folks in your industry and with your comparable tenure, are y'all all the same? Or what is that thing that you know you possess that they don't? It could be classroom management, it could be project management with engineers. Um, you should be confident about that and lead with that. That's your specialty. You got to figure that piece out. And so for me, just give an example, I know my specialty is that I tie organizational brand and organizational culture together. I work on that inverse relationship between the two. Not everybody can do that because I spend time managing and learning people, but also managing and learning people from a marketing standpoint. I figured out how to work those two things together, and that's been my value proposition at organizations. Beyond that, I feel like I'm a good manager of people because I lead with my experiences. Brandy?
One of my strengths that I know is mine is forming positive relationships with scholars and their parents. I have parents of scholars that I taught 25 years ago that still talk to me today. So I know how to form relationships with parents of scholars, but they'll do anything for me. Like I don't want for anything with my present scholars and the ones I've had years ago. So that is my strong point, 100%. And classroom management, obviously, but definitely those relationships for sure. Sorry about the smoke alarm.
Does anyone else, thank you, Brandy. Does anybody else feel confident or comfortable to share? Like, what do you feel like your value proposition is? It's okay if you don't. And you should be getting into bed.
Yeah, I would say, building relationships.
What's that?
Building relationships
Building
within the
relationships.
within the organization with whomever you work, even for the other side of the organization, try to reach out, try to offer your help, and yeah, build a relationship. Yeah, that's very important for me.
So I think that that's an important step, like knowing what your value proposition and then how do you lead with that so that folks can see that and it shows up in the workplace so they know it. That's another, I think, another aspect of it. The last one here is what need are you fulfilling? So if everybody's there doing the same thing or a couple folks with the same titles, what need are you fulfilling in the organization? And if you can't figure it out, articulate it, they probably can't either, and you might be in danger. Oh, hang on, let me shut this door real quick. So you might be in danger if you can't articulate the need that you're fulfilling in an organization because somebody else is trying to figure that same thing out. And if they can't figure it out, what's going to happen? You might start to get pulled off projects or um, you may look up and the role's gone. I've seen that happen. So I'm going to give you some homework, another piece of homework here. So these are your boundary buckets. This is something I came up with back when I came up with this whole idea of what we're talking about today. And it's not anything that's like revolutionary. I just need to figure out where was I spending my time. And so a part of my realization was that I was spending a bunch of time helping everybody achieve their goals. And when I looked back at the time, I had nothing accomplished for myself. I was tired, all kinds of money, supporting other people or whatever they had going on, all sorts of events, people asking me to do things, and I'm spending all my time helping them out. And so I said, I can't do that anymore. It's not sustainable. So here's an example of what some boundary buckets can look like. So once you start to figure out what do you want to do, who do you want to be, all that good stuff. So I broke mine into these buckets here. And for me, it's external visibility. So I send text messages a lot to folks. I may see something that they post on LinkedIn, or I just check in with people. I'll share what I'm posting on LinkedIn on a regular basis. And then also I'm trying to secure like a speaking opportunity because I enjoy public speaking. So I want to stay, kind of stay out there with that. I've limited my time between organizations. I only have time for 3 organizations in my life. My fraternity, where I serve on a international committee, New Joy, which is a board that I'm on, and the American Marketing Association. I don't have time for any other organization. Somebody asks me for something, I have to say, no, I can't join it. I can't do it because these things also add value to my life and they're helping me get to where I'm trying to go. So in terms of giving back, I can't help everybody's fundraiser. So I have to draw a hard line. So I'll try to raise $2,500 for the Lupus Foundation, donate $500 to New Joy, and then also mentoring other marketers or members of my fraternity. Outside of that, I can't commit to it. Some folks will be upset with you, but you have to figure out how do you manage and manage your time, or else you're helping everybody do everything and you're not getting anything out of it, but you're a good buddy. That's about it. And I put this in my brand. So I have a book that I'm working on. So a goal is to finish the book, read 2 books a month. That was a goal before I started my doctoral program. I try to read 1 book a month. Now, professional development, which was mentioned earlier around continuous learning. I spent a lot of time there. Started the doctoral program, as you see, I did that, and then working on a promotion for my, in my current role. So that's a conversation I'm having right now with my boss. Like, what does that look like? Is it even possible? And I'm not waiting for her to tell me that. You have to be proactive because I want to know if it's not possible, then it's time to go, maybe. No hard feelings. What you need and what you have available might not match my timing and what I need. There's no hard feelings, but I'm not going to wait for that. So being proactive with that. So I challenge you all to create your own 4 buckets. They can have whatever you want in them, but this is after you figured out where you're trying to go, what do you need to do, who are the people you need to meet. Put those things in this bucket and be very specific and say, you know what, I want to finish my degree, or I want to learn about whatever skill. Be very, very detailed and hold true to it. Share it. Share it on social media so folks will hold you accountable. People like me, I'll say, where are you at with this? I'll send you a text message. Hey, where are you at with those books? Where are you at with this? I'm the accountability friend. I have no problem doing it because I know I needed that. I didn't have that. I didn't have that for the most part. So I need that kind of encouragement um, for that. So I'm going to skip this one. It's just kind of like some outcomes of, well, no, I'll go through a couple of them. These are some outcomes of like a weak personal brand. No one can vouch for you, which is what I hate. I've had people reach out to me and I can't refer them out for a job. I can't because I know them. And I'm like, that's not a good look. And I don't want that on me, my relationship. Challenging finding mentors, not being able to count on your classmates or alumni is a huge one. No noticeable value proposition over the competition. We just talked about that. If you don't know your value proposition, no one else will know it either. Getting stuck or stagnant in your career, that's also translated to waiting for someone to come save you. Slow or no professional growth, and it's perceived lack of confidence. And so sometimes that can be imposter syndrome, which is it's a real thing. The last thing that I have here, and we can open it up if there's any other questions or a discussion. I'm a big reader. And so as I think back over all the books that I've read and which books have been very impactful for me, I've whittled it down to these 6. Super Connector is a great book, which is back there somewhere. A great book on how to build relationships. And if you already build great relationships, how do you take it to the next level? So how do you then start convening people together, curating spaces? Hey, I'm gonna get a few people together. And it sounds basic, but there's some examples in there of how do you put a great event on. You might think I thought I knew everything until I read this book, and I'm like, there's levels to this. I didn't know that. So I recommend that book there. Expect to Win by Carla Harris is an amazing book. She just puts it out there in plain English, especially those that are in the really corporate spaces. I think she's in investment banking. So there's that kind of lens there. Executive presence is a huge one. So if you're wondering why you may be being passed over, why you're not leading the way you think, it could be your executive presence. I know this is a hot button topic. Some folks feel like, I don't like executive presence. But how you show up does make a big difference. How do you speak in meetings? How do you command authority? Or how do you delegate? How do you ask questions? It all sounds trivial, but it does make a difference. If you think about in your workplace, there are people you listen to because of the way they ask questions. You don't have to be the loudest in the room either. It's how they ask questions, how they position, how they show up. She does a great job of talking about that. Still in the Corner Office, it's a good book. What got you here won't get you there. So great, you're here at this level. That's not going to get you to the next level. So here are some things you need to adjust and think about. And then also the purpose path. So kind of pursuing your authentic life's work. It's like a self-reflection book of, am I doing what I want to be doing? Am I doing what I should be doing? And all of that. So that is all that I have for this. And I will take my screen down. We can open it up for a few questions. If anybody has anything or reflections. I'm just now seeing the chat because I couldn't see it, but I open it up.
There's a lot of gratitudes conveyed through chats, and one of the items is we would like to have the recording, so I will get that from you and share with
Yep.
everybody, right? So it has been very interesting. Yeah, and then anybody who has any comments would like to share?
Please unmute, turn your camera on, all that good stuff.
Oh, very quiet group today, huh?
I don't know, maybe hopefully I put folks into a deep thinking or thought
Mhm.
process.
Definitely. Yeah, I really resonate with you when you talking about the pivot and the next. Oh, Sora has a question. Let him ask first. Sora, need to unmute. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
yeah. Hey, Matt, or hey, Kevin. Thanks for the session. Great session. Great takeaways. One question I have, you mentioned about executive presence, and I wanted to hear from you. How did you go about building your executive presence, and how that has been a journey for you? Would love to hear from you.
Excellent question. I will say it's I would say firstly it was just observing others. So in different meetings, different spaces, or even just different professionals, um, just watching how they behave, their mannerisms, and watching how others react to them in the room. Reading has been a a huge help for me. I read a lot of like biographies and autobiographies because it helps me understand the thought process around folks on their ascent to whatever C-suite position. And it also keeps it a little bit human so that it's not, you don't think that you come out of business school with this. You don't. It's something you have to develop. So like most of the books I have back here, it's a lot of leadership books, but there's a lot of biographies of successful people. And you learn how they shifted and how they have started to surround themselves with the folks that they wish to become someday. And I think that that's important. I spent a lot of time around folks that were more senior to me in different spaces or folks that had roles in marketing that I wanted to have one day. Like, how are you talking about the work? Because I'm thinking about it at this level. How are you talking about this work? Or how are you making an impact there? And the other part has been just practice. So spending a lot of time talking, not being afraid to speak up in a meeting, always as long as you make sure your timing, tone, and your tact are together, ask your question, push back, and starting to build that confidence of I think that there's something wrong with this, or maybe we aren't considering this thing here. So you start to slowly build your confidence. But I think the best thing is the practice. I did also take in one of my courses I took over at Kellogg in Northwestern. I was a part of a executive leadership cohort over there. They made us do a lot of talking and to see how many times we would say and all of those filler words, and it helped because then it makes you start to stop and think about what you're saying, and it makes you embrace the pause. And I've noticed that it's not always the person that comes with the answer first. It's the person that pauses for a second and thinks, and you know what? I have an opinion or a thought on that. So just kind of pausing and not just jumping to respond. So reading, surrounding yourself around the people you kind of admire. But then there's also just that practice, getting comfortable speaking is probably one of the biggest, the biggest activities that I completed that's helped me with my executive presence because I'm not afraid to speak in any room or in front of anyone or ask any question because I know my timing, my tone, and my tact are going to be on point. But I'm also not going to just ask a question just for the sake of asking it to seem smart. And I've had to have that conversation really quick. I've had to have that conversation with my current boss. And she was like, well, I noticed in some of these spaces, you don't have a lot to say. I said, because I don't. I had nothing to add to that. When I have something to add, I'll speak up, but I'm not going to just speak just so everybody knows that I'm there. And so she had to learn that from me, that I'm not going to always just jump up and speak, because I hate when people do that. It's like, thanks for saying that. That was in the agenda. That was in a PowerPoint. You just restated what was already there. But yeah, just practicing, I think, is a huge one, but also surrounding yourselves around these folks.
Yeah, great advice. By the way, I did the ELP, the Asian ELP though. I think I saw you had one of the executive leadership programs through McKinsey. I did
Yep.
that one recently. That's
Yep.
a great program as well. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, thoughts, reflections? Did I bore you? What did you take away? I want to hear it all.
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, I'm Kiran. And nice to meet you. Put me in deep thoughts about reflecting in the past and what to look forward. In your experience, do you think the values of how we react have changed over the course of the time? How companies react, how leaders react?
React to
The day-to-day situations.
I think it's pushed to the extremes. Some companies have leaned in and others are leaning out. And so the companies that lean in, those are the ones you see that are really trying to figure out how do we resonate the best with our staff? How do we make sure we're giving them as much as they want or as much as they need? And other companies are like, take it or leave it. This is a great opportunity. And so I think there used to be a bit more of a spectrum or continuum, but now you're seeing it more of an extreme. And these are those great opportunities to ask those questions during interviews, like figuring out like how do you ask that question? How do you react to what's going on? Or how did you respond to what was going on in the industry? And so you'll get the answer that you need based on how they responded. You'll get the answer based on how they look at each other when you ask the question also. Um, but that takes a little bit of homework of what do you really want to get out of, having conversations with companies, or even just in general, if you're not looking for a new role and you're just in your existing role, you might start to look at your company a little bit differently to say, do I feel like they really care about me? 'Cause there are companies that do care, contrary to what some people believe, but you'll know that. You'll know those companies. But if you have a question, they probably don't, and you have to make a decision. Will this bother me? Or is it a non-negotiable? For me, it's a non-negotiable, and everybody's different. I feel like, I've worked too hard and spent too much time with so many different companies to not get a sense of belonging there. And so that's one of my non-negotiables. If it's not the culture that you foster, that's cool. I just can't work here because that's going to be what I expect, because that's what I'm going to give you. If you can't give me what I'm going to give the organization, that's not a good fit for me. But yeah, I think it's been pushed more to the extremes, and I think that's also driven by some political factors as well.
Thank
Oh,
you.
you're on mute, Vivian.
Sure, I thought maybe we could have one more question before we conclude today's discussion. Rem, do you have anything you want to share? No?
Hey,
Oh,
Kevin.
Yep. Who's that?
Sorry. Hey, Kevin. Again, thank you for the presentation. Just a question is that how important do you think your goal and your manager's goal are aligned? In terms of, for example, if you and your manager are both, like, for example, trying to go up, that I feel in my experience, that kind of working relationship is a lot better compared to, for example, if a manager is just trying to coast and retire versus another person who is trying to really go up into the company or vice versa, then there tends to be a lot of friction in terms of misunderstanding. But if both you and your manager has kind of like the same trajectory and the same type of goals, it's a lot easier to work with.
Mm-hmm. No, it's definitely easier when you both have aspirations, and then it's been super important for you to follow what they have prescribed because they need to be able to backfill, and their boss is going to ask them, so if we move you up, who's going to move up? Is that person ready and capable? If you're fighting what they want, then that's not going to happen. Now, I think it's trickier in the other example that you shared, just around, if you have a boss that's kind of coasting, and I've experienced that, and you have other goals, that's tricky. This is where you have to sometimes lean on your political capital or social capital in an organization and figure out, is there a path around that person, or is it through them? If it's through them, good luck. Unless you really, really are killing it and you have great relationships with other folks that are more senior to your boss and they can advocate and you've built that relationship, that's going to be hard. But to go around them, that may be a little bit different. That may be a different path. And so you have to figure out your comfort level in talking to other people. You have to be mindful that this may always get back to your boss, but having those conversations, say, hey, you know what, I'm thinking about some advancement opportunities, but I don't see a clear path. I think my boss is content, where he or she is, but I want to move. I want to continue to go forward. What advice do you have for me, or what were your recommendations? Sometimes you just need to throw it at somebody else to see what they think. I think one of two things are going to happen. They may give you some good insight, or they may perpetuate the culture. And again, you got to make a decision. It all comes back to, what are you going to do with what you just learned? Are you going to sit on it, or you have to make a pivot, or are you cool with it? So, I don't know if that's a great answer, but I think depending on your relationship in your organization, if you have a good rapport with some folks that are a little bit senior, um, I think it's sometimes good to have a conversation with them, just like, hey, what does this look like? Somebody's kind of closely aligned that knows the work that you do and the dynamics of the organization, versus, chatting with your boss. Maybe sometimes having that chat and asking your boss, like, hey, what does growth and advancement look like for me here? And see what your boss says. And again, you got to make a decision. Are you cool with what they told you, or do you have to pivot? So don't shy away from asking. I think many times, or oftentimes, we assume the answer or the outcome because we don't ask directly, or we kind of passively ask the question. But just ask it flat out, like, what does growth and development look like here for me? Is there a path for me here? What do you think? And so now you heard it straight from their mouth. So now you have a decision to make. Are you cool with it, or is it time to talk to the next person to figure out, is there an alternate or lateral path for you?
Understood. Thank you. This is very helpful. Appreciate it.
Mhm.
Because I'm sort of, I'm have some sort of that issue where, because like you mentioned in your talk in the beginning, there's not a lot of movement in my organization of a lot of people with extremely long tenures. And right now I'm lucky in terms of me and my manager have the same goal, but at some point it's going to hit the wall very quickly in terms of there are, I would say, quote unquote blockers who are just trying to coast and retire soon, but I need to get them out of their way for me to achieve my goals. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Sorry. It's really kind of like 5 minutes past our time.
Yeah, sorry
Yeah.
about that.
Rem, do you have any question? Maybe just one quick one? Rem? No? Okay. Okay. All right. So that's it. So thank you. I mean, again, Kevin, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us. Really helpful. Even though I listened to this a second time, I still found it very valuable. A lot of reminders. So I really need to put the plan to work on it. So thank you so much. And I do want you to have the recording. So
Yes, I'll get the recording to you. Yes.
okay. Thank you. And let's stay in touch. I'm sure that maybe other members in our community here in the Bay Area would like to invite you back for the second time. Who knows? We'd love to stay in touch. And thanks again.
All right, thanks, sir, for having me. Thanks for letting me intrude in your evening. We will chat soon, everybody.
Thank you.
And tell
Thanks very
Eva
much.
good night. I hope that she's already in bed.
Oh, she's in bed. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.